It's 1954, and two American marshals are sailing through choppy waters toward a remote island that houses the most dangerous, criminally insane patients in the country. Teddy Daniels, our protagonist, is making small talk with his new partner Chuck about the case ahead of them. During their conversation, Teddy mentions that his wife died in an apartment fire, a detail that seems straightforward but will become crucial to understanding everything that follows. They're heading to Ashercliff Hospital on Shutter Island to investigate the disappearance of a patient named Rachel Solando, a woman who drowned her 3 children and then calmly sat down to eat dinner at the same table where she'd laid out their bodies. She's vanished from a locked room, and somehow no one knows how she escaped. When they arrive, the atmosphere is immediately unsettling. The guards stare at them with suspicious intensity, and the deputy warden makes it clear that certain areas, particularly Ward C, are absolutely off-limits. The marshals are required to surrender their firearms, which makes Teddy visibly uncomfortable. Something about this place feels wrong from the moment they step foot on the island. Dr. Corley, the lead psychiatrist, greets them with apparent cooperation, explaining his progressive approach to treating the patients. He believes in providing comfort and attempting cures rather than simply containing these dangerous individuals. But when Teddy asks about Rachel Solando, the details he provides are disturbing. She didn't just drown her children, she arranged their bodies on the dining table and ate her meal while staring at their corpses. During this conversation, Teddy experiences a brief but intense flashback that leaves him dizzy and disoriented. Corley explains that Rachel believes the hospital is actually her home, which is why her escape is so puzzling. How do you flee from a place you don't think you're imprisoned in? The marshals search Rachel's room and find a cryptic note hidden beneath the floorboard. The law of 4, who is 67? The message makes no sense, but Teddy treats it as a crucial clue. When they request access to personnel files and patient records, Dr. Corley becomes evasive, claiming concerns about patient privacy and confidentiality. The investigation continues with a search of the island's exterior. The warden insists that Rachel couldn't have swum away or hidden in the poisonous caves that dot the coastline. They interview the staff, including Glenn, the guard who was on duty when Rachel vanished. His story is suspiciously simple. He left his post for exactly 1 minute to use the bathroom, and somehow she disappeared in that brief window. One of the nurses mentions that Rachel was in a group therapy session led by Dr. Sheehan. But when Teddy asks to speak with this doctor, Dr. Corley explains that he's conveniently left for vacation. The storm raging around the island makes it impossible to contact him by phone, leaving the marshals frustrated and increasingly suspicious. That evening, they're invited to Corley's house for dinner, and Teddy is struck by how lavish and expensive everything appears. How does a public hospital psychiatrist afford such luxury? They meet Dr. Nehring, Corley's colleague, who immediately puts Teddy on edge with his probing questions and intense scrutiny. Nehring makes unsettling comments about men of violence, like the marshals, suggesting that their expertise lies in understanding people who resort to brutal solutions. This triggers more memories for Teddy, flashbacks to his time in the army, where he killed enemy soldiers and witnessed unthinkable atrocities. The conversation becomes increasingly tense when Teddy demands access to all personnel files, and Dr. Nehring flatly refuses. Frustrated and angry, Teddy announces they'll be taking the ferry back the next morning. But that night, his dreams are filled with disturbing visions of his wife. She appears to him covered in blood, telling him that Rachel never left. She literally turns to ash in his arms, and he wakes to find water leaking through the ceiling of his room. The storm has intensified overnight, making ferry travel impossible. Trapped on the island, Teddy and Chuck decide to continue their investigation. They request permission to interview the patients who were in Rachel's group therapy session, starting with Mr. Breen, a violent man who slashed a nurse's face with a razor. The interrogation proves fruitless, with Breen providing no useful information. Teddy becomes increasingly agitated, scratching his pencil aggressively across his notepad.
No patient named Andrew Latis. Do you know?
Next, they interview Mrs. Kearns, who seems more lucid than the other patients but still can't provide any meaningful details about Rachel or Dr. Sheehan. But something strange happens during this interview. When Mrs. Kearns asks Chuck for water, she manages to write something in Teddy's notebook. Later, when they're alone, Chuck asks Teddy about someone named Andrew Laedis, a name Teddy has been mentioning to every patient they've interviewed. Teddy reveals that Andrew Laedis was the maintenance man in his wife's apartment building, and that this man started the fire that killed her. According to Teddy, Ladis had also burned down a school and was sent to Shutter Island as a patient. This is why Teddy really came to the island, not just to find Rachel Solando, but to get revenge on the man who murdered his wife. When they check what Mrs. Kearns wrote in the notebook, they find a single terrifying word. The weather worsens, forcing them to take shelter in a cabin in the woods. Here, Teddy shares more disturbing memories from his time in the war, particularly an incident where he and his fellow soldiers massacred hundreds of enemy troops who had surrendered. He insists this wasn't warfare, it was murder, plain and simple. During this conversation, Teddy reveals his growing suspicion that Shutter Island is conducting illegal human experiments on the patients. He believes the government is testing mind control techniques and using the hospital as a cover for their activities. Chuck seems skeptical, suggesting that maybe the higher-ups wanted Teddy to come to the island for reasons he doesn't understand. Their conversation is interrupted.
They found us, huh?
This is Deputy Ward McPherson.
It's an island, boss. They're always gonna find us.
Rachel Solando has been found. They rush to her room and find a woman who claims to be Rachel, but her story doesn't match what they've been told. She speaks about making breakfast for her children and seems to recognize Teddy, hugging him and sobbing while asking cryptic questions about who he really is. The encounter leaves Teddy with a severe headache and visible distress. Dr. Corley provides him with pills to ease the pain and offers him a bed to rest in. As Teddy sleeps, he's plagued by more horrific dreams, mountains of corpses from the war. Andrew Ladis sitting calmly in Dr. Nairing's office, and Rachel Solando with her dead children bloodied on the floor. In the most disturbing vision, Teddy picks up one of the dead children and carries the body to a lake, along with a bloodied Rachel. When he wakes, his wife appears to him again, telling him that Andrew Ladis is still alive. But then he wakes again, suggesting that even his waking moments might be part of the dream. They discover chaos at the hospital. Several patients have apparently escaped during the night. Using the confusion as cover, Teddy and Chuck sneak into the forbidden Ward C, hoping to find Andrew Ladis among the most dangerous patients. They encounter a guard who confirms that some prisoners have escaped, and Teddy claims he can feel Ladis nearby. Suddenly, a bald man appears and attacks Teddy, choking him from behind. Teddy fights back violently, nearly strangling the man to death before guards arrive to restrain the patient. As Teddy explores Ward C, he hears someone whispering the name Ladis. He follows the sound and finds a patient named George Noyce, who seems to know him personally. George makes the disturbing claim that he's in Ward C because of Teddy, suggesting some shared history between them. George plants seeds of doubt about Chuck, asking if Teddy truly trusts his partner. He also presents Teddy with an impossible choice. He can either kill Ladis or uncover the truth about what's really happening on the island, but not both. George seems to be trying to help Teddy remember something important, telling him he needs to let go of his wife. According to George, Ladis has been transferred somewhere else, but Teddy remains convinced that the man is in the lighthouse, a building that's supposedly off limits and heavily guarded. Chuck tries to dissuade him, showing him an intake form that confirms Ladis was indeed a patient on the island. Teddy's paranoia about Chuck reaches a breaking point, and he insists on going to the lighthouse alone. Chuck tries to stop him, but Teddy is convinced that his partner is part of the conspiracy.
What the hell happened back there in those cells, Ted? Maybe you better sit this one out.
When Teddy returns to find Chuck, he discovers what appears to be his partner's body at the bottom of a cliff. He tries to retrieve an intake form that's blowing in the wind, but when he looks back, the body has vanished and he sees hundreds of rats instead. The distinction between reality and hallucination is becoming increasingly blurred. Following a fire in the distance, Teddy finds a cave where a woman claiming to be the real Rachel Solando is hiding. This Rachel tells a completely different story. She claims to be a doctor who never had children and was investigating the hospital's illegal experiments when she discovered the truth about what they're doing to patients. According to this Rachel, the hospital is testing psychotropic drugs and conducting mind control experiments, trying to turn patients into weapons for government use. She warns Teddy that they're planning to use his trauma to declare him insane and make him their next test subject. She reveals that everything he's been consuming, the pills, food, even coffee, contains drugs designed to break down his sanity. Most disturbing of all, She confirms that brain surgeries are being performed in the lighthouse, which is why the building is so heavily guarded. This Rachel tells Teddy that everyone on the island knows about the experiments, and they're all part of the conspiracy. When Teddy leaves the cave, he's immediately picked up by island officials and brought back to the hospital. Corley claims that an unidentified man was seen talking to George Noyce, and when Teddy asks about Chuck, the doctor delivers a shocking revelation. Teddy came to the island alone. There never was a partner named Chuck. The walls of reality are crumbling around Teddy, but he refuses to accept what he's hearing. He confronts Dr. Naring, catching him with a syringe and turning the injection on the doctor instead. Naring insists that Teddy is mentally wounded, but Teddy sees this as confirmation that they're trying to drug him. Teddy steals a car and drives toward the lighthouse, but his wife's apparition appears again, trying to convince him to go to the ferry instead. She's accompanied by his children, but Teddy remains focused on his mission. He abandons the car and swims to the lighthouse, determined to confront whatever truth awaits him there. After overpowering a guard and stealing his weapon, Teddy storms the lighthouse and finds Dr. Corley waiting for him in the top room. The doctor asks about Teddy's hallucinations, and when Teddy mentions Dr. Solando, Corley gently tells him that he's been delusional. The truth that emerges is devastating. Teddy has been a patient at Ashcliffe Hospital for 2 years. There was no missing Rachel Solando, no investigation, no partner named Chuck. Everything has been an elaborate role, play therapy designed to help him confront the reality he's been unable to accept. Dr. Corley shows Teddy his intake form, revealing that his real name is Andrew Ladis, the very man he's been hunting. All the names he's been obsessed with are anagrams of people in his life. Rachel Solando is an anagram of Dolores Channel, his wife's name. The missing patient he's been searching for is actually his wife, and he's been trying to find her because he can't accept that she's dead. The man Teddy thought was his partner Chuck enters the room, revealing himself to be Dr. Sheehan, Andrew's primary psychiatrist for the past 2 years. They've allowed him to live out his fantasy for 2 days, hoping that by playing along with his delusions, they could eventually guide him back to reality. Andrew pulls what he thinks is a gun on Dr. Corley, but it's just a toy. The final, devastating truth is revealed. Andrew's wife Dolores didn't die in a fire. She drowned their 3 children in a lake behind their house, and then Andrew shot her. The Rachel Solando case isn't about a missing patient. It's Andrew's mind trying to process his own wife's crime and his response to it. The memories come flooding back in agonizing detail. Andrew remembers coming home to find Dolores sitting by the lake in wet clothes. When he asked where the children were, she kissed him and he saw their small bodies floating in the water. He tried desperately to revive them, carrying their lifeless forms to shore and laying them side by side. Dolores, in her psychotic state, wanted to bring them inside and pretend they were dolls, to set the table and act like they were still alive. She told Andrew she loved him and asked him to set her free. And so he did. He shot his wife, ending her pain and his children's suffering while destroying his own life in the process. Andrew admits the truth about what he did, acknowledging that he created the Rachel Solando fantasy to avoid facing the reality of his actions. Dr. Corley explains that Dolores had been showing signs of severe mental illness, but Andrew had ignored the warning signs. He'd been so focused on his work and his own problems that he failed to get his wife the help she needed. The breakthrough seems successful. Andrew appears to accept reality and understand what actually happened. Dr. Corley explains that this is his last chance. If he regresses back into his delusions, they'll have no choice but to perform a lobotomy. But the next morning, when Andrew meets Dr. Sheehan outside, he greets him as Chuck, again apparently having forgotten everything from the previous day. Dr. Sheehan signals to Dr. Corley that Andrew has relapsed, and the decision is made to proceed with the lobotomy. However, Andrew's final words suggest something more complex than a simple relapse, which would be worse, to live as a monster or die as a good man. The question implies that Andrew may actually remember the truth, but is choosing to pretend he doesn't, rather than live with the knowledge of what he did to his wife and the guilt over failing to save his children. He's choosing to be lobotomized while still believing he's the hero of his own story. The ending leaves us with a haunting question: is Andrew truly delusional, or is he making a conscious choice to embrace death rather than face the unbearable weight of reality? In his mind, living as Andrew Ladis, a man who killed his wife and failed to save his children, is worse than dying as Teddy Daniels, Marshal who was trying to solve a case and protect the innocent. If you've made it this far without smashing that subscribe button, congrats. You officially have more self-control than I do at a buffet. But seriously, hit subscribe. I waste my life watching movies so you don't have to. It's the least you could do.